Hello again from Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin, broadcasting from Rigel Studios here in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on my website, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, as well as the American Guns and Glory Network, YouTube, and numerous other media. If your local internet provider doesn't carry Fired Up, just ask him to do that. We'll take care of it. A new show is posted every Thursday around 5 p.m. Pacific time. The audio is rebroadcast for radio listeners on Saturdays at noon on the Nevada Talk Network. You can find them at KELY1230.com with a list of stations in your area, 17 or 18 stations throughout Nevada. If you have questions or comments, send me an email at bob@firedupmail.com or leave a message on my office recorder, which is 702-257-1060. If you would like a callback, please leave your number. There are several hundred defensive users of firearms each week in the United States, rarely truthfully or fully covered by news media. I always select a few for my listeners' information. Mostly they're good shootings, some not so good. They're all educational for those of you that keep a defensive firearm at home or carry one out in public. Individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law, so the information given here may not apply where you live. Advice from a local gun knowledgeable attorney is always recommended. And stories are often paraphrased for clarity, generally by me, by translation from police jargon, lawyer speak, and regional accents into more standard American English. The incidents are as reported with the names of the participants deleted. The names of the cops, the lawyers, and the media are generally used. We're going to be a little bit today on some legal issues. There's a lot going on in the world of gun laws and so forth, and a lot of it. Anyway, a group called the National Association for Gun Rights sent me a letter. It was a mass mailing, I'm sure, but anyway, it was from Senator Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, about the fight against the United Nations Small Arms Treaty and the current attempt in the United States Senate to ratify this really dangerous treaty. It's a rather lengthy thing, but when they get down to the nuts and bolts of what they want to do, or their member countries to do, in Article 5, this treaty mandates countries establish a national council list to track end users of small arms and light weapons for a minimum of 10 years. The introductory language already includes mandated national screening for those seeking to own firearms, giving bureaucrats the final say on whether or not you are competent to own a gun. Restrictive licensing gun and ammo sales, and perhaps even bans on certain types of firearms. This would include anything from semi-auto rifles to shotguns and handguns. Restrictions on the number of guns and amount of ammo any properly licensed, that's their wording, individual may own. It has a ban on magazines holding more than 10 rounds, where we heard that before. Bans on owning a firearm for self-defense unless a citizen can somehow demonstrate need and get a federal government approval. You have to be if you're a member of this treaty in a country, you have to be approved by your national government to own a firearm. That's pretty much every place in the world, if you're not aware, other than the United States. More direct comments here. Republican Senator Rand Paul has always been an advocate of less government, low taxes, and individual freedom. His pro-Second Amendment views are well known. If this United Nations Small Arms Treaty could actually force our government to comply, or our current left side administration and Senate to choose to comply, It would be the end of firearm rights in the United States of America. Chairman Mao Zedong said in 1938, "Every communist must grasp the truth. Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. The seizure of power by armed force is the central task and the highest form of revolution." I'm sure Bernie Sanders likes this, but we'll leave it there. I gave you the website earlier on to go to get information from Rand Paul. I'm sure if you just go to Rand Paul or whatever website he is in the Senate or in the government, that will lead you to this. Story number 2 is a update on last week's story on Senator Dianne Feinstein's 2021 assault weapons ban. As of the 15th of March, more than 2/3 of all Senate Democrats have signed on as co-sponsors. The list of 34 senators ranges from so-called moderates like Amy Klobuchar, who wants your guns too, or avowed communists like Bernie Sanders. It's getting support. You need to be aware of it and contact whoever you can yell at in the government. Story number 3, a brief note. The Nevada Carry blog gave me some information on something in our state legislature here called AB 286. This bill, as written, and it's currently in the news, they voted on it part of yesterday, and they continued it again till tomorrow or the day after. This bill could ban guns nearly everywhere that isn't either public property or an owned home. Unless you have written consent to carry a firearm from the owner or operator of covered premises, you can't carry there even if you have a CCW permit. Covered premises would apply to nearly all types of businesses. Potentially, it would be illegal to carry a gun at a grocery store or drugstore just because they have slot machines. Because if you recall on our recent news, Gaming Control is jumping into all of this to clear this person and that person from having firearms. And because it's the casino business, they're allowed to regulate all sorts of things if there's slot machines there. Anyway, gas stations with slots would be illegal to carry there. It would require signs, but if a business does not post a sign, lots of people would certainly be screwed. This is the mini version of what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now, and Sisolak's government is doing the same thing to Nevadans. In case it doesn't work federally, he'll get you anyway. We're going to break for a couple of minutes here for a commercial on my latest book, which is available on Amazon Kindle. You can check it out. I'll be back in about 2 minutes. Don't go away. My latest book, Self-Defense with Firearms, Use of Force in Nevada, is now available on Amazon Kindle for $4.95. You can download it now. It contains examples of dozens of shootings and pointing a firearm cases that I personally experienced in my 24 years in law enforcement, or where I testified in court or deposition as a firearm and use of force expert. The book is about the use of firearms in defense of yourself and others in my home state of Nevada. I have appeared as an expert witness in Nevada courts dozens of times, and that experience has shown me the necessity of putting pen to paper once again. Nevada state law as printed can be misleading to those of you who read it, as it is written in legal jargon, what I usually call lawyer speak. These statutes are also bent or even broken by the courts in their everyday decisions that we generally call case law. Those are rulings that say this or that statute does not apply in a particular incident and similar cases. That causes the law you are depending on when you make a decision to use your firearm only partially or not apply at all to your actions. Relevant Nevada statute numbers are included here and there, so readers may look up current wording on the Nevada State website. Teaching firearms in 28 law enforcement academies, including cadets from 26 different Nevada agencies, personally instructing over 30,000 concealed firearm permit students and 20,000 private security officers, I've discovered a lot of commonalities in deadly force incidents. Less than 100 pages, this book offers advice that can save lives and costs of expensive defense lawyers to reduce your losses in the inevitable civil lawsuits that follow these incidents. Get a copy, learn how to avoid, prepare for, and react to life-threatening situations. This fourth story comes from KXLY News 5 in Spokane, Washington. A journalist named Aaron Robinson reported March 10, 2021, in nearby Chattaroy. A Chattaroy man was shot by a Spokane deputy after calling on the department for help. This is a cluster here. Spokane County Sheriff Ozzie Knizovich, maybe the K is silent, said the shooting happened after an earlier report of a burglary at the property on Grouse Road, north of Chattaroy. The property owner reported to Crime Check, that's one of their computer call-in systems, around 7:15 in the evening that a winch, tools, and other items had been stolen from his property. Additional items had been set aside, so the victim thought the suspects would be returning later. That caused the owner to ask for law enforcement to check on the area during the remainder of the night, which they did. The sheriff added that unbeknownst to law enforcement, the property owner decided to come back to the property. When a deputy conducted the prowl check, the property owner confronted the deputy and shots were fired. The deputy tried to provide medical aid immediately, and scanner traffic reveals a tourniquet had been applied to the victim. The property owner was hit and transported to Sacred Heart Hospital. The property owner went into surgery Sunday night, and there is no information yet on how he's doing. The police have this just completely shut off from the media. The Spokane Independent Investigative Response Team, how's that for a mouthful, has taken over the investigation, and per standard protocol, the deputy who fired his gun was placed on administrative leave. Spokane County Sheriff's officers don't wear body cams that could have potentially given answers on what exactly happened. This story will be updated as more information is confirmed. There's a lot of stuff here. My comments are obviously, clearly, this is a friendly fire incident. There don't seem to be any actual bad guys involved. Law enforcement officers everywhere are trained to give clear, loud, verbal warnings when possible. When suddenly confronted by an armed adversary, there is little time for deliberation. Shooting back after he shoots you is a really crappy option. Nothing in any law enforcement policy manual says you are required to die on duty. That probably is true even in notoriously anti-gun Washington state. First, to the property owner. When you think there may be a prowler or intruder on your property, call 911 to summon the professionals and get away from the immediate area. Go to a friendly neighbor's residence or just walk away down the middle of the road with your hands away from your body. When the police approach, and they will because you called 911, right? Follow their commands exactly. Remember, they are looking for an armed prowler and have no idea who you are. You will likely be proned out, probably handcuffed and searched. When they ask you, you can explain who you are. This incident is totally wrapped up. They look like they have the officer is going to be in trouble for firing. We don't know. Two guys who both were basically the good guy in the wrong place at the wrong time and not paying attention to what they should be doing. We're going to break now for a word from a few of our friends and associates. I'll be back in just a bit. Freestyle Martial Arts, located at Jones and Russell here in Las Vegas. You can reach them at 702-551-9009. That's 702-551-9009. CCS Gunsmithing. Chris Eifelt, the man who does all the NRA help, he's at 2216 South Rainbow Boulevard near Sahara. He can be reached at 702-365-1732. Once again, 702-365-1732. Jerry Creed, a trust attorney. If you have a firearms trust or need one, this is your guy. You can reach Jerry at 702-806-7777. That is 702-806-7777. CCW Maggie is found all over the internet. You can reach her by phone at 702-375-5900. That's 702-375-5900. All sorts of firearms training, ladies only classes. She is the best of the best. Call CCW Maggie. Story number 5 today. The DallasNews.com, a journalist named Charles Scudder, reports March 15, 2021 in West Dallas, Texas. Officers were called about 9:30 in the morning to the 1800 block of Bayside Street. That's near Hampton Road and the Trinity River, if you know where that is, in response to a report of a shooting. According to an arrest warrant affidavit, the 41-year-old was visiting a home in that block and got into an argument with a 31-year-old who lives next door. The younger man, the 31-year-old, pulled out a handgun and shot the older man multiple times. He then put the handgun in his backpack. Arriving officers found the 41-year-old wounded. He was taken to an area hospital where he was pronounced deceased. Police reported the 31-year-old shooter also managed to accidentally shoot himself in the hand during the incident. Officers spoke to the shooter at the scene and he surrendered his firearm to them. He told officers that he shot the 41-year-old in self-defense. He was then taken to a hospital for treatment of his hand injury. The 31-year-old was later booked into the Dallas County Jail on a murder charge with bail set at $250,000. He does not have an attorney listed in the court records. Comments here. I expect the investigation will find intoxicants, alcohol, or street drugs, or both, along with a history of mental illness in this guy. Just a guess, but I have seen this scenario before. If the deceased victim in his murder had availed himself, if the deceased victim in this murder had availed himself of his right to keep and bear arms, perhaps he would have survived. As I have often said, sometimes trouble just finds you and there's nothing you can do about it. The robbers and wackos of the world get to pick the time and place of any attack. Always carry where you are legally allowed. In places where you are not supposed to carry, first answer is don't go there. The other options are less lethal devices, a good set of track shoes, or a criminal defense lawyer on speed dial. When you or your loved ones are in danger, sometimes there are no good options other than an understanding jury. Sometimes that's what you got to depend on. That's why the lawyer is on speed dial. We're going to break for a short commercial now from a few of our other friends. I'll be back in about 30 seconds, I think. Attorney Donald J. Green, a common guest of mine on Fired Up. He can be reached at 702-409-8239. He specializes in gun case litigation. He is your man. Don Green, 702-409-8239. And Battlefield Vegas, my new kind of home for this show. They're on Circus Circus Drive, directly behind the Circus Circus Hotel and Casino. You can find them there with CCW classes and an amazing place for gun rentals, everything you could possibly imagine. Check out, if you're in town as a tourist, check out battlefieldvegas.com. And I'm back. Surprise. Story number 6. APnews.com, a journalist named Ellen Gerst, said the Casper, Wyoming Police Department reports March 4, 2021. Several Casper police officers responded to a kidnapping call, entered an apartment back on August 7, 2021. An intruder had entered the apartment and held a woman he found inside for ransom over a methamphetamine transaction, apparently. The intruder had barricaded himself and the victim inside a bedroom. After an officer cracked the door open, the intruder shot once through the opening, his shot nearly hitting the officer and causing another to trip and fall. The intruder shot one more time after police announced themselves again. Body camera footage shows officers giving repeated warnings before forcing entry into the apartment and then into the bedroom where the victim was being held. Her ransom, according to the victim's boyfriend who alerted police to the situation, was $250. District Attorney Dan Itzen said Wednesday that Casper police officers shot and killed the kidnapper in their own defense and in the defense of another person. The intruder was holding a woman he had kidnapped in his apartment and shot twice at police before they returned fire. 2 officers were hit by debris from the kidnapper's gunfire, but report no serious injuries. After reviewing the Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigations report, District Attorney Itzen said the Casper police sergeant and 4 officers who responded to the call will not be facing any charges. The report found the intruder's decision to barricade the apartment left law enforcement with very few choices considering the very serious nature of the call. An autopsy revealed high levels of methamphetamine consistent with police findings that he and others in the apartment decided to get high just before the police entered the apartment. Lower levels of marijuana and alcohol were also detected in his blood. Police spokeswoman Rebecca Ladd said all of the officers involved returned to active duty on Monday. The kidnapped victim was later treated for her injuries. Two other people said that police participated in the kidnapping, a male and a female are now facing charges of aggravated kidnapping, and robbery. Apparently there were 2 other people involved that helped after the fact to hide stuff. Interviews with police indicate they were pursuing the victim because the kidnapper suspected she had taken methamphetamine from him to sell it and didn't pay for it. The comments here, the courage of the responding officers is clear. With all the scripted television shows with responding SWAT teams and hostage negotiators talking everybody into surrendering, in real life, it is the patrol officers there at the time that actually do the most of the work. These incidents start and stop in just a few minutes, often in only a few seconds. I wonder if the defund the police liberals have ever been in a sudden, violent situation. Violent crime, particularly home invasions, are up across America. In our civilian world, the timing is the same. Often there is no time to pick up your phone before the intruders are upon you. Be armed, be practiced, and have a plan in mind. I don't want to once again say when you have seconds to do something, the police are minutes away. That is obviously true in these home invasion cases. Home invasion after home invasion all across the country. And guess what? Yeah, defund the police. That'll help. Seventh story. NBC News, a journalist named Janelle Griffith reported March 15, 2021, since the start of jury selection in the trial of a former Minneapolis police officer charged with murder in the death of George Floyd, it was apparent that while the facts of the case were black and white for the prosecution and the defense, when it came to prospective jurors, it would have to a little more to do with black versus blue. Attorneys have homed in on two questions on the juror questionnaire. How favorably prospective jurors view the Black Lives Matter and the Blue Lives Matter movements. I suggest listeners search NBC Janelle Griffith Chauvin trial. It's Janelle, Griffith as standard, and Chauvin, the police officer that's the primary, the guy that was kneeling on his back, remember? In our liberal new world, everything seems to be about race. Defendants presume they get a better result if their judge, prosecutor, defense attorney, and jurors are the same ethnic background as themselves. That prejudice is extremely rare. In my experience of numerous judge-only or jury trials, 99% of our legal system is not racially biased. If they are based on life experiences, they really try to set aside those biases. Almost everybody tries to be fair and apply the law fairly. They all do. It is so important. And I'm going to just go off script here. In a number of jury trials I've had over the time, we've had black defendants and white defendants and whatnot. And the one that comes mostly to mind was a trial where we had a black defendant accused of what he said was an accidental shooting, which I believe it actually was. But we had two black jurors, and most of the rest of them were white, and I think one Hispanic. And when we got through with the case and the jury found the defendant not guilty, because it really was an accidental discharge that the police, for complicated reasons, thought was live fire because they were in the area. And when a gun went off, and they thought the gunshot was aimed at them, it had nothing to do with them at all. But anyway, the two black jurors were the only ones who voted guilty. And all the other people, mostly white, voted not guilty. Because the two black jurors were familiar with all the black crime in their neighborhood. And so they did see it through their own prejudice that the guy may be guilty, or they believed he was guilty. And he wasn't. I was the defense expert, and he wound up not guilty. Anyway, I'll be back next week on my website, firedupwithboberwin.com, the American Guns and Glory Network, and numerous other websites, television, and radio stations. When watching any media, please click on subscribe so new shows can be sent to your phone or computer automatically each week. Check out my recent shows at firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains several dozen episodes. My logo merchandise, hats, shirts, and books are available at Battlefield Vegas just behind Circus Circus on the Las Vegas Strip. You saw their commercial earlier. It's a wonderful place to go. I would suggest anybody coming to Vegas, go there. You can contact them at info@battlefieldvegas.com. Thank you so much for watching Fired Up. I'll be back next week with more of this stuff going on in all these trials and all the legal ramifications of it. Thanks for watching.